Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Winning Draft Podcast. I'm Reeta Hubbard, the NFL chick, co-host of the Glenn and Reeta Show on 105.7 The Fan, with my guy Cordell Woodland from Shaking It Up Sports and the Ravens reporter for 105.7 The Fan. And Cordell, the Ravens win in a crazy fashion against the Los Angeles Rams in overtime, 37-31. One of the wildest games you can imagine of the year. And look, I could be living in recency bias. There probably was some wilder games this year. I just don't remember them. I remember this one being a back and forth situation. I believe there was 9 lead switches in this game. The way that it ended, the bad calls, the no calls, there was just a lot going on in this game, but ultimately the Ravens found a way to prevail.
Yeah, I mean, to your point, I think this is the wildest game that the Ravens have been a part of this season. I mean, at least one that they've come out on top in. You can make the argument that maybe that Browns game was just as wild with the way that they were able to come back. But to see the Ravens, kind of fight off their demons a little bit, get the fourth quarter draft that they got out of Lamar Jackson. And I think that was so good because I feel like people have forgotten how good Lamar is in the 2-minute drill, how good he is in those type of game tying or game winning situations. This year, they haven't been in that spot a lot. But if you think about Lamar historically, that's when you get the best version of him because he's using his legs more and then also looking to make plays down the field. And that's what he did on Sunday as well. So it was just good to see the Ravens in an unusual spot. Like I said, playing from behind, they haven't really trailed at all this year.
Right.
And that was one thing I had talked a lot about coming out of the bye week was that down this final stretch of these last 5 games, I think we're going to get a lot of questions answered about this Ravens team because they will find themselves in positions that they didn't find themselves in the first 12 games. And we already got a taste of that against the Rams. And look, they've got more intense matchups coming up that lead me to believe that this isn't going to be the only back and forth game that they have.
Let's expand on that part, Cordell, in terms of the offense, because this is a group that really shows some resiliency when it mattered the most. And I tweeted this on Sunday during the game. And I said, we're used to the defense when the offense is struggling. The defense finds a way to have the offense's back, right? This is a game where the defense didn't necessarily play well. It's fair to say that the concepts that Sean McVay was problematic for.
They're elite.
Yeah, it's very, very good. And when he's clicking, and I mean Matthew Stafford, it's really hard to stop this team. And so this defense struggled. And that's going to happen, right? It's football. You're going to run into guys that are going to have your number. And this day, the Rams had the Ravens defense number. And so my question was, maybe it was more of a challenge, Cordell. My challenge was, is this offense going to step up when their defense needs them? Because their defense has done that for them more times than not this season. Literally just a couple weeks ago in the Chargers game, we can say that about them. When that offense really wasn't clicking on all cylinders, the defense did what they had to do to make sure that the win was sealed. But ultimately, were they going to be able to step up and find a way to win this game? And they answered my question. They found a way to come back and at least make this a game where the Rams had to move down the field and get a field goal to make this go into overtime. But that's something that we all wanted to see. And Lamar, I think I've come to the conclusion, because I think we've asked this question many times on this podcast. Why is Lamar not running like he used to? Why is, what's the reason? And while I don't know the specific reason, I have my theories on why, but this is what I've come up with. And I think Sunday solidified this for me, Cordell. It's not that he won't, but I think that Lamar preserves himself on the ground for when there's moments like Sunday's game where they need him on the ground to make plays, that he'll do it. So what he's not going to do is do it all 4 quarters, right? He wants to stay in the pocket, and I'm completely fine with that. But there were times in Sunday's game when you'd be like, that would be normally a situation where Lamar would take off, but he's trying to find an open receiver. He's, doing this. What I've come to the conclusion is that Lamar is really just preserving himself for when he has to take over to make sure that this team solidifies the win. Because in my opinion, when you have games like that, Lamar has to be the hero. He has to put the cape on. He has to find the way to keep the ball going, to keep the chains moving. And he did that on Sunday. And he did that also with his legs in addition to his arms. And I think that that's where Lamar is when it comes to the running aspect of his game now.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I've talked about this a lot on this podcast and probably on my show as well. Everybody's been looking, has been talking about, the Lamar hasn't been showing his legs as much as he has in the past. And I figured coming out of the bye, that was going to change. He had 11 carries for 70 yards in the win over the Rams. And a lot of that damage was done in money time, in game winning time. When they're on the 2-minute drive, he's taking off with his legs. He's keeping them honest. He's picking up chunk yards. It's funny that even with Lamar running less, he still leads all quarterbacks in rushing this year. That's despite Jalen Hurts, who runs probably more than anybody. Now, Jalen Hurts gets in the end zone more than any other quarterback right now. But you got guys like Josh Allen that are still taking off, being leaned on a lot in the run game. Lamar still is showing that he's an efficient runner.
Yeah.
And that's what I love the most about him. And you're right, that game against the Rams, that's the type of game that Lamar has to put the cape on and be Superman. And he did. And look, we could talk about how Lamar does need to get better as a passer on some of those deep
On the
balls.
deep
Those
balls,
deep
yeah.
balls weren't pretty.
No.
There's no way to go around it. I'm sure the weather had somewhat of a factor. We talked to Lamar post game, and he talked about how he gets excited, a little too excited when he sees guys streaking down the field. But look, they're taking the shots, and they hit on him yesterday. I mean, he finds Likely wide open down the field. He finds Beckham wide open down the field after such a great double move by Beckham on
Absolutely.
Jordan. I mean,
and he said he ran the wrong route.
He did say he ran the wrong route.
Which
exactly.
Is crazy,
I mean,
which is even
but
more
that's
crazy.
The way it goes. And I think when he says he ran the wrong route, it makes me believe that double move wasn't supposed to be a double move. He looks like he's breaking as an in breaking route, or maybe is running a deep post or something like that, and he sees the safety bite down on it. So he just uses his instincts to go up the field. That may also explain why he had to wait for the ball the way he did, because Lamar looks to pump fake it when Beckham is going into his initial cut. And then when Beckham turns it and goes upfield, I think Lamar has to kind of readjust on the fly. And this is just my thinking, but rewatching the play, it looks like maybe Lamar is trying to get the ball there all of a sudden because Beckham did change his route on the fly. But look, credit to him for finding Beckham, and Beckham for seeing the open area and getting there. First of all, that's just such a veteran move. Second, it shows you this number one. This is how Beckham has gone his whole career. Beckham has always been known as a freelancer when it comes to his route running. I probably need to ask that this week, how much he's done that this year, because throughout his career, that's been one of the knocks on him, is that he doesn't stick to the script of the play. He kind of goes out there and just does what he wants. So I am curious to see if he's able to do that in this offense. But it does show you that he and Lamar are somewhat on the same page for them to hit on a play where Beckham is basically calling his own audible on the fly. But yeah, the ones to Bateman are concerning. At this point, it's Lamar and Bateman's connection is officially concerning. I mean, how long are we going to let this go before we just abandon the well, they'll get it together, or
Right.
they got. The reality is they don't have the chemistry that they should have at this point, and
Yep.
that's kind of out of their hands. They both has missed a substantial amount of time throughout throughout the last 3 years, really throughout Bateman's career specifically. Bateman hasn't been able to. It's ironic. This is the healthiest Bateman's been in his career this year. And so he's at his healthiest, but Lamar's connection with Zay and his connection with Odell, and I would argue his connection with Nelson Aguilar is
Oh
stronger
yeah, for
than his
sure.
connection is with Rashad Bateman right now. So it's unfortunate, because I do think Bateman is a heck of a talent, but he doesn't do himself a disservice when he's halfway running routes down the field, and then you've got times where Lamar's missing them down the field, whether it's him overthrowing them or underthrowing them or simply not throwing him the ball at all. It was times in the game against the Rams where Bateman had beat his guy and didn't get the ball thrown to him. And so, not to make it an excuse for him, but just looking at the humanistic side of it and getting in Bateman's mind, that may be one of the reasons why he's slowing down on some of those routes, because he's not expecting to get the ball. I tell people this all the time. Wide receivers are running 30 to 50 routes a game and probably get the ball thrown to them 4 or 5 times. It's hard to stay engaged. Now, they should stay engaged on each one of those routes. Yes, absolutely. But it's tough. It's tough to push yourself to run full speed on all of those routes, knowing that you may not end up getting the ball. So, but I thought Lamar was on point. You look around the NFL, Reeta, I can really only name the Niners, the Cowboys, the Dolphins, and that's probably about it in terms of offenses that are smooth offenses for 4 quarters. Those are the only offenses in the league that I watch and say that they really are sharp all the way through. So the Ravens having their misses here and there and having their moments to where it just looks ugly, and then they can turn it around and put it all together for a drive here and there. That's just who they are. And really, you look around the league, that's what the league is right now.
I agree with you. I don't really know what the Rashad Bateman situation is. Now, look, Lamar underthrew that one pass, and that was the interception. And that's not on Bateman, but I think a lot of people had an issue with his lack of effort, like after the catch was made. The first one, in terms of when he runs down, he's kind of lollygagging, and then he realizes, oh, the ball is coming to me, and then runs and gets the effort.
That one I think was a makeup throw. Because the
interception
earlier,
was a makeup throw.
The one that not the one that got intercepted, but the one that he threw to Bateman down the field, and Bateman kind of was jogging and looked back up.
That happened first, and then the interception happened.
I say that one was a makeup throw because Bateman was open maybe a play or two before, and he didn't get the ball down the field. So I mean, I don't know this for sure, but just when I watched it live, to me it felt like a makeup throw.
Yeah, okay, makes sense. And so they'll figure it out. And look, everybody didn't play sharp yesterday. Zay Flowers had a drop yesterday. Odell had a drop yesterday. Guys were missing opportunities yesterday. But when it mattered most, they came up and they found a way to be consistent and move the ball down the field. And that's the part that I really loved about seeing this team when it's on the line, absolutely, they found a way to win. Let's flip it over.
Hold on, one thing. I'm sorry. One thing, because the offensive line played really good, and we've talked a lot about how bad the offensive line has been, or not necessarily bad, but inconsistent. And you had a tackle rotation yesterday, a pretty big one, because Makari is going in for Stanley, what felt like every other series, and Lele is rotating for Morgan Moses in the game as well. And I thought all of them really played well. You didn't hear much from Aaron Donald in the game. He had his moments to where he's getting closer.
Oh yeah, but that's because they was doubling, triple teaming him. That's why you ain't hear much from them.
They definitely did everything they could. But Aaron Donald is such a freak of nature. It was times in the game where you could tell, all right, this is a big play in the game. These are big moments in the game, and that's what 99 is saving his energy for. And to kind of watch him at times dominate people. And yeah, he may not get the sack, but he's almost there. He's getting the pressure. Just as a fan of the game, that dude is out of this world.
I completely agree with you. So finding a way to try to contain him as best as possible obviously was a big part of what it is they wanted to do. And unfortunately for them, sometimes I think 56, the linebacker, was able to get open because
Mm-hmm.
Aaron Donald was
Right.
occupied by so many
You'll
guys so
live
many
with that.
times. But ultimately, they still found a way to win, and that to me speaks volumes in terms of what it is that they wanted to do. Because Cordell, that I have questioned what this team is going to do with elite pass rushers moving forward the final 5 weeks of the season. Let's flip the script to the defensive side of the ball here on Winning Drive. So as we know, the defense did not have the best game on Sunday. And shout out, I don't want to say shout out, but credit to Sean McVay for what it is that he does, because he's phenomenal when it comes to offensive schemes and offensive concepts. And you can look, we saw Odell with his, did it say frenemies on
Yeah,
his
frenemy.
sweatshirt?
Yeah.
Okay. Very weird. Had they lost, we'd have been having a conversation about that hoodie, but they won, so here we go. But ultimately, you got to assume Odell loves with the Rams, not only because he won a Super Bowl there, but because it's probably a wide receiver's dream with the concepts that they run offensively. And I was concerned because the Rams was coming into this game on a 3-game win streak. They have been playing exceptionally well on offense the last few weeks. They come into M&T Bank Stadium and they play. Look, we thought that, I know for me, I definitely got comfortable with how good this defense has played. And I definitely took that offense of the Rams for granted, because when we did our picks, I only picked them to score 13 points, I think. But ultimately, I also thought it was going to be raining much harder than it was, because it
Right.
really didn't rain as hard
And
as.
it was really no win.
And there was no wind, and it was warm too. So that
Mm-hmm.
those things kind of changed the dynamic of what we thought the game was going to look like. But then, here comes the defense, who has, although they've played well, Cordell, one of the things that you and I have talked about in terms of their struggles has been run defense. And I think Fox acknowledged that they're like 11th in run defense, which isn't bad, obviously, right? They're in the top echelon out of 32 teams, I guess, if you want to look at it that way. But it's always been something that we've looked at and said, this isn't well. And so I saw people complaining about how conservative the Ravens were coming out in their first possession, and the Rams turned around and not only were conservative, they were successful.
Yeah.
They just were running the ball in that first series down the field. And then for whatever reason, once they got into the red zone, they decided that they wanted to throw, which was dumb. But that's, to me, because coaches think that they're smarter than everybody else instead of just doing what they should be doing. And, here we are. So struggling against the run defense, struggling just generally in the first half. They did tighten up better in the second half of that game. But the first half, and from a run perspective, was very, very interesting, to say the least.
Yeah, I mean, the issue that I've had with the Ravens run defense is what happens when a team game plans and commits to the run game, because they've gotten away with teams pretty much going away from the run game. And you mentioned the Rams on the first drive, 9 straight runs at one point just to get into the red zone and have 3 straight incompletions to kind of kill that drive. But 25 carries, 114 yards for Kyren Williams. I mean, that dude, he was a dog. I mean, I'm watching him drag guys. He's so good after first contact. The Rams did a really good job with their blocking schemes, getting to the next level. Matt Abike talked about that, how they were just, that was the adjustment the Ravens made. In the first half, the Rams offense was able to kind of get up to the second level to block guys like Patrick Queen and Roquan Smith in the run game. And that's why sometimes you weren't seeing Kyren Williams get first contact until 7 yards up the field. But the adjustment that they made in the second half was that those defensive linemen, instead of shedding those blocks, they stayed on those blocks a little quicker, I believe, or maybe it was the opposite. Actually, they shed those blocks quicker to get to the point of contact earlier, and that was big. That definitely changed the game in the second half. But look, the Rams passing game is what it is. The Ravens have been so good at limiting big plays through the air all year, and they faced a team that excels in that. And I, the Ravens defense has done such a good job all year of dictating how how opposing offenses would work, and they weren't able to do that in the Rams game. The Rams had them on their heels. That's the first time this year I've seen an offense pretty much all game have this Ravens defense kind of responding, trying to counterpunch instead of being the aggressors in the game. And it's tough. Look, Kyle Hamilton goes down. We'll find out his status, but that's a huge blow for the Ravens, not only for that Rams game, but potentially going forward. We'll see what his issue is now, dealing with that knee injury. But when they've got guys like Kupp who really showed out, 8 catches, 115
hey man,
yards.
Can we talk about this real quick? Why the one play where Kupp had a striking, a long pass down the field, he's in motion and he catches the ball in the flat. Hey man.
Oh, wide open.
How do you forget the cover Kupp of
all? It looked like Arthur Millette was running with him, and then
he never ran. No,
well, no, I'm talking about in the motion, and then he stopped.
Oh yes, that's correct. Yes, you're right. Yes, he did.
And then just kind of released him. I don't. It was clearly a busted coverage. I don't know if he thought that they were switching off or what that was, but I mean that turned out to be huge. Because.
I'm just gonna freestyle it. If I see that Kupp is by himself, hey man, I don't want to leave that man by himself.
No.
If y'all not gonna do it, I'm gonna do it. Okay, because I'm not gonna he is the best receiver on this team easily. We watched Kupp when the Rams needed to make a play in the Super Bowl, take over the game.
Mm-hmm.
Did he not win the MVP? Am I tripping? Okay, so why are we leaving Kupp by himself? I mean, I'm flabbergasted at the fact that y'all think that y'all could just leave that man in a space by himself and think that he's not going to do what we know that he does best. But I'm sorry, I had to get that one out.
I mean, and that drive in itself was crazy because remember, if I'm correct, I think that's the drive where, the Rams were punting and Tylan Wallace is called off sides and they end up coming back on the field, and then they're able to get that big play to Kupp to end up getting them in the red zone, where they would end up scoring to Demarcus Robinson, and John Harbaugh uses a challenge there, which was a big question in itself. And I did ask John Harbaugh about that after the game, and his response was that essentially he used that challenge to get more time to set up for the 2-point conversion. And I've had some time to kind of think about that, and I'm not saying that I necessarily believe him, but I'm not saying that I don't believe him either. Like I could see it. I could see it. And I'm not going to lie. As he's answering that question, I'm looking at him like, John, is this what we're going with? Like, this is what you're thinking of? But the more I thought about it, I could see that being a legit reason, because if they call the timeout, it's probably a 30-second timeout. They really don't have the time. He calls the challenge in which they weren't even really allowed to challenge at that point. And it takes so long for the officials to kind of decide that. And he not only gets the time for them to talk about the challenge, but then he also gets his timeout on the back end as well, because they're forced to use the timeout. And then it goes on and the Rams don't convert the 2-point conversion. So it all works out for John Harbaugh. But that was definitely puzzling in itself. But look, the Rams offense, I said it going into the game, I don't think the Ravens have faced an offense like the Rams this season.
Yeah.
The Bengals are supposed to have that type of personnel where they have all those wide receivers. But the 2 times the Ravens have played them this year, the Bengals just weren't right. It's either Higgins isn't there,
that's
Chase,
not even just this year, though,
Cordell. Joe Burrow.
It's not even just this year. The Bengals don't typically play the Ravens defense that way generally. Just think about the late game from last year when it was a very low score.
Mm-hmm.
But here's the difference too. The Bengals have Zach Taylor. No disrespect.
Right.
Sean McVay and what he's able to do is generational, I think. And I just don't think that Zach Taylor has has that type of privy that Sean McVay does.
Oh,
So while they have the players, they don't have the schemes and they don't have the concepts
that's
at all.
that was more so what I was talking about, the personnel at wide
Yeah,
receiver, the
yeah.
fact that the Rams have a legit probably two wide receiver ones on their team between Puka and Cooper, and Cooper's a
Yep.
monster. But Puka Nakua is the stuff he was. I mean, that out of bounds dive and catch that he has, the savviness,
Unreal.
the
Unreal.
savviness to kind of hook Marlon on that, and then get the defensive pass. And that's a fifth round rookie making that
Knowing
type
how
of
to get a
play.
call, dog.
I mean
Come
that,
on, man. And we all know that that was bogus as
oh,
hell.
it was definitely bogus.
Not only was the and forget the fact that the ball was uncatchable. Forget that. But
Right.
like you said, he hooked Lamar, he
Yeah,
hooked
he
Marlon.
definitely hooked him. He definitely hooked him. But I mean, you just don't get that type of savvy play from a fifth round rookie. And they've got
Yeah.
two fifth round rookies on their team, and Puka and Kyron Williams, that are both looking like studs. So a lot of people have gotten on the Rams for kind of punting on these first round picks that they haven't had. But when you're able to find gems late in the draft the way that they are, and you have the coaching that they have, you're going to be just fine. But yeah, it was good to see the Ravens get tested on the defensive side of the ball, because it is a good test for what's coming up. And I talked to Arthur Millette in the locker room, and he wasn't pleased about the way that the defense played in the game. But he understood that this is just that time of year, and this is what it's going to be. The closer that they get to January, these wins are going to be tougher to come by. And just me personally, I think winning a game like they did against the Rams, that's a character building win. I would be more concerned if the Ravens were able to get to the January by just destroying everybody, as opposed to being battle tested the way that I think they will be once they finish this final stretch of the regular season.
Yeah, and look, we have to find out what's going on with Kyle Hamilton. We know that he left the game. He had left the game earlier on what
Mm-hmm.
appeared to be a non-contact injury at first, but he came back in. Then he exited, and then he was out. It's apparently a knee issue. They're going to have an MRI, I believe, on Monday to see, what the extent is of that. You hope it's just maybe a sprain and that he's not lost for the season. That's a huge loss if Kyle Hamilton is not able to go. And look, the Ravens have playmakers all around the field, so they'll find a way, I'm sure. But losing Kyle Hamilton would be a big loss if they are able to do that. So look, it happens. Great defenses have bad games too, and the Ravens did that. But ultimately, you still feel confident about what they're able to do, to know that they're still going to find a way to make plays. Because, like you said, they didn't get the 2-point conversion. They tightened up a little bit better in the second half. Marlon got to catch that ball though in the end zone. We're gonna have to have a conversation. That's why you play defense, Marlon. We understand now, because you can't catch a ball like like the way you can probably catch a cold. So ultimately, it happens, but I'm still confident that this defense will be able to rebound in the next coming weeks. And look, it's not going to be easy. We know they got Jacksonville, they got San Francisco, they got Miami, you know what I'm saying? So they got some prolific offenses that they're going to be seeing in the next few weeks. But I'm confident that they'll be able to find a way to tighten things up and be better down the stretch. Let's do pats on the hat. It might be a lot going on, but let's try to do 3 a piece on
Ladies first.
on the hat. Huh?
Say ladies first. I felt like you was about to hand it over to me.
Oh, you gonna give me the ladies first. All right. You know what? Let's give it to Lamar. Let's get the first pat on the hat to Lamar Jackson. The statistics won't tell the story, because if you look at Lamar's stats, while he does have 3 touchdowns, 1 interception, his QBR was only 92.8. His completion percentage was only 55.8. But ultimately, it's not about the stats. It's about when he showed up in that game. He also had 11 runs for 70 yards. What he was able to do at that final drive was just phenomenal. And that is what you want to see from a team that has aspirations for the Super Bowl. You want to see them be able to pick up and deal with the adversity and say, nah, we got this. And that's what it looked like. And the general, Lamar Jackson, did just that. And so shout out to him, man, for finding a way to lead his offense to move down the field and get the win. Well, obviously, get the lead because we
Mhm.
know it dwindled, but to at least get the lead in that game that could potentially would have been the win moving forward. So I'm going with Lamar Jackson for my first pat on the hat.
Yeah, I mean, rightfully so. He had the 300 yards passing as
Yep.
well. And look, the completion percentage is going to go down when you're pushing the ball down the field the way that the Ravens did in that Rams game. Those aren't high percentage plays. The further down the field you throw the ball. But yeah, it was good. That's the trade off. They hit on some of the deep balls, so you're going to lose a little bit on a completion percentage, but you get the 3 touchdowns, you get the 300 plus yard pass a game, and 70 yards on the ground. Great day for him. I'm going to go with Tylan Wallace. I mean, the
Yeah.
hero of the day, 76-yard
Yes.
return. And it wasn't like he was just able to just go the entire way untouched. I mean, that was will and effort to score that touchdown. That was him fighting for his moment right there.
Yep.
And look, Devin Duvernay is another guy that's being evaluated, and hopefully we'll be able to find out more about his situation. But Tylan Wallace coming in cold off the bench and being able to come through for the team in that moment and breaking multiple tackles, not losing his balance, not stepping out of bounds while
Yeah.
going up the sideline. I mean, that was big time right there. And it couldn't have happened to a better dude. I mean, this is a dude that I thought really played his butt off in the preseason during training camp to fight and earn his spot on this team. And look, it's tough. It's tough to go out there and you're practicing hard, you're putting in the work, and then come Sunday, you're not getting opportunities. And you talk about getting your shot and not missing it. Tylan Wallace really came through in a big way for the Ravens, and it was just good to see kind of all his hard work come full circle for him.
Completely agree. I mean, that was just a moment. And, while I wasn't at the bank just to see like the reaction from the crowd, from the videos and stuff, you were
Mm-hmm.
there. Obviously, it just felt like it was so electric when that was going on. And that, he deserves that. He's made the team. We've had conversations about if Tylon was going to make the team
Mm-hmm.
and all these things. And for him to never had done a punt before, apparently, come up huge. And guess what, y'all? I don't care about that. Maybe it was a block in the back, not blocking the back. Don't care about any of that. The refs got a lot of calls wrong in that game. So the way that I look at it, the football gods made it all even. So
Hey, Patrick Mahomes would have loved it. He said he wants players to decide the game. That's what happened. The players decided
exactly.
the game.
Exactly. So there's that. And I love that for them. And Tylon, congratulations to you for just having your moment because you definitely deserve it. I'm going to go with the defensive line for my pats on the hat. Yes, it's going to be more than one. I'm going to give that the group. Travis Jones and Justin Madubuike each had a sack. Justin Madubuike is now double digits in sacks, and he's had 8 consecutive games where at least a half sack. I believe.
I gotta check it.
But ultimately, this man is, I hate to say it, feels like he's pricing himself out of Baltimore. But hey, listen, you got to love the ride while the ride is still going on, right? And it's just been great. Travis Jones is a guy that I think he's very athletic. I think that I'm excited to see him develop more because this is only his second year as a player. And I'm excited to see how he grows and becomes a force on this team moving forward. But ultimately, the defensive line guys definitely tried to do their best to get at Stafford, which wasn't really a whole lot
Mm-hmm.
yesterday. But the guys that did get to him was the guys on the defensive line. So shout out to those 2 guys for being consistent and getting the sacks that they got on Sunday's game. Who else you got?
Yeah, I'm going to stick on the wide receiver side. I'm going to go to Zay. Zay coming up huge for them. 6 catches, 60 yards, the touchdown, gets the 2 point conversion as well. Yeah, he had a couple of drops, but Zay had a couple of really timely catches. He had one on the sideline that he had to really reach up and grab, and then he makes a guy miss, and he gets contact, and he's dragging two guys for a couple more yards. That was that whole first of all, the touchdown to Zay and the 2 point conversion, that was big boy
Yes.
football. That was
Yes.
big boy football by everybody involved. Lamar sitting in the pocket, making that throw, Zay working his way open on not only the touchdown, but also to come down with the 2 point conversion. That 2 point conversion play is probably the next hated play for me after the goal line fade. I hate when teams roll the quarterback out in those situations because it cuts off half the field. And
Yeah.
we just don't really see a high percentage of success on that play because the route concepts are basically the same each time. And defenses, once they see the quarterback getting out of the pocket, they're almost sitting on somebody making an out breaking route. But credit to
Mm-hmm.
Zay to work open and Lamar to go away from his first read, which was Isaiah Likely, and find Zay Flowers in the back of the end zone. That was big time. But we're watching Zay really come into his zone. 3 touchdowns in the last 2 games for him. And this is why I didn't have an issue with him scoring that touchdown at the end of the Chargers game because we just you talked earlier about could the offense step up when the defense wasn't there. And the way that the offense played in that Chargers game, it was just so blah that I think they desperately needed that play that Zay scored on at the end of the game to kind of put it away. Don't
Yep.
even put the defense back in that position. Let's do it ourselves. And I do feel like that can be a momentum jumper, not only for Zay, but for this offense as well. So it's just really good to see Zay continuing to mature.
I am going to stick with the wide receiver spot and I'm going to go with Nelson Aguilar. Now, why do you ask that? Well, Nelson Aguilar's numbers ain't really great when you like it's not like he balled out. He had 5 receptions on 5 targets for 32 yards. All right, cool. But he had some opportunities that helped move the chains. He
Mm-hmm.
was very good with that. But also, Cordell, the Zay touchdown. Nelson Aguilar is a big part of why that Zay touchdown was able to
Yeah.
happen because Nelson pulls the safety
Mm-hmm.
away for a split second. That really gave time for that play to develop and for Zay to get the one-on-one matchup and get the touchdown. So while sometimes it's not about the statistics, sometimes it's about the guys that's out there being a part of what is going on. And I think that, we like to look at the paper and say, oh, well, this person did this and oh, this person did this. But if you don't have Nelson Aguilar doing that, you potentially don't get the Zay touchdown. So you have to acknowledge his part and not only working the outside of the field because he did really good with that, but also him doing his part with trying to move the guy away so that Zay could get the matchup that he wanted and ultimately score. So I'm giving my last pat on the hat to Nelson Aguilar for being one of the unsung heroes in Sunday's game. What's your last pat on the hat, friend?
I'm gonna stick to the wide receivers. I'm going OBJ. OBJ, 4 catches, 97 yards, including that 46-yard touchdown. Uh, just I think he is really coming on at the right time. This is the time of year that they signed him for. He's been hot. You outside of that Chargers game that I think that they gave him a planned rest for. Didn't get a lot of reps in that game. Didn't really get a lot of action in general. But he was back in a big way. And this one continues to find the end zone. And I think that's going to continue to happen for him as the year goes on, as they continue to play in these big games down the stretch. OBJ is showing himself to be kind of Lamar's go-to guy. Another game with 10 targets. Him and Zay Flowers, the only two guys with 10 targets in the game on Sunday. So I think OBJ is it looks like the shoulder is becoming less of an issue for him. And he's just so quarterback friendly. He has excellent hands, great route running ability. just a nose of finding an open area and making himself available to his quarterback. I just think he is going to continue to get better for this offense.
Yeah, I really love the fact that those guys had, drops, and then they found a way to find, get in the game and make plays when it mattered the most. So, and that's what you want, right? That is what you ask for. You want your guys to look, you're going to make mistakes. But unlike the Steelers game where it felt like that they were deflated from their drops, they didn't give up. And
Mm-hmm.
that's just, Odell is a big part of the veteran leadership of this team that I've always felt they needed when Rashad Bateman was drafted, because Rashad really didn't have a veteran presence that he could rely on. And now guys like Zay and Rashad, they have the veteran presence of Aguilar as well as Odell that can help them, just keep it pushing and be the motivators that they need to off the field as well. So shout out to Odell for just continuing to be the standard, particularly down the stretch when the Ravens really need him this season. So we look forward to seeing what he's able to do for the rest of the year. All right, Cordell, look, we talk about, Harbaugh and the terrible call, and we didn't talk a lot about the refs. We could probably do that sometime this week. We're going to just enjoy this win, and we'll critique these guys with we'll pick through it a little bit later. But
Mm-hmm.
for now, the way that game was played and the way that it ended, I think is enough for a celebration of sorts. They did what needed to be done. And I think we should just continue to ride this high until the next episode, of course, when we'll find some reasons to feel some type of way of what happened in Sunday's game. So if you were at the game, thanks for being loud. Thanks for being, proud out there in the rain. We appreciate y'all. We'll be back sometime this week. We'll talk more about that big thriller against the Los Angeles Rams. We want to thank you all for listening. So from Cordell to me, this is Winning Drive.